Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
15 years of marriage, 2 kids, a house in a quiet Denver suburb, and a routine that felt as solid and dependable as the foundations I designed for a living. That was my life. I was Elias, a civil engineer for a mid-sized firm, and my world was built on predictability. My wife, Corinne, was a marketing manager at Apex Marketing Group, one of the biggest advertising agencies in the area. Our lives were a carefully constructed blueprint of shared responsibilities and comfortable patterns. School runs, soccer practice for 9-year-old Owen, listening to 12-year-old Clara's dramatic retellings of her middle school day, and quiet evenings that bled into one another with a comforting sameness. The structure was sound, or so I believed, until small, almost imperceptible stress fractures began to appear. At first, I was sure I was imagining things, projecting my own work stress onto the quiet canvas of our home life. Corinne had always been a bastion of affection, a woman who enjoyed long, sleepy hugs before bed and slow, coffee-scented kisses in the morning. But in recent weeks, she seemed to exist behind a pane of glass. She was present physically, but her mind was always somewhere else, lost in a landscape I couldn't see. When I tried to talk about her day at work, her answers, once detailed and vibrant, became short and vague. "It was fine," she'd say, her eyes scanning the screen of her phone. "Just tired. We've taken on some huge new projects at Apex." I accepted the explanation without question. I'd been there myself, the long hours, the mental fatigue that follows you home like a shadow. I gave her space, took on more of the evening routine with the kids, assuming it was a temporary phase. But the small changes began to accumulate, like grains of sand forming an unsettling dune in the middle of our living room. It started with the showers. They became longer, and her phone, which used to charge on the kitchen counter or the nightstand, now always went into the bathroom with her. The steam and the sound of running water became a new kind of privacy screen. When her phone would ring, she'd step away to answer it, her voice dropping to a low, confidential murmur. "Agency matters," she'd explain with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Last-minute meetings, demanding clients." I tried not to pay attention, to suffocate the uncomfortable feeling that was beginning to coil in my chest. But the pattern intensified. Corinne started going out more often during the week. Before, our evenings were reserved for family dinners, the occasional dinner with friends, or school events. Now, her calendar was suddenly filled with happy hours with coworkers, networking events that ran late, and client dinners that seemed suspiciously frequent. I tried to be the understanding husband, the supportive partner. The marketing world demanded a social presence. I knew that. But when I'd ask for details, who was there, what the event was like, she'd skillfully change the subject or offer vague summaries that felt hollow and rehearsed. Sitting alone in the quiet house after putting the kids to bed, I'd find myself staring at the empty space beside me on the couch. I'd trace the seams of the cushions, feeling a deep, unnameable sense of dread. The routine we had built, the one I had mistaken for stone, felt like it was beginning to unravel at the seams, and I was terrified to pull on the thread. The facade of our life began to crack under the strain of Corinne's new persona. It wasn't just the late nights anymore. It was the woman who came home from them. She started dressing differently, even for work. Her professional, stylish but modest wardrobe was slowly replaced by tighter blouses and sleeker skirts. She bought new perfumes, scents I didn't recognize, that lingered in her room long after she'd left. She spent more time on her makeup in the morning, her face a carefully constructed mask of confidence. One evening, as she was getting ready for another networking event, she came downstairs wearing a deep red dress I'd never seen before. It clung to her in a way that was undeniably beautiful. "Wow," I said, genuinely taken aback. "You look incredible, Corey." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was a strange, secretive smile, as if she was the keeper of a private joke. "Thanks, Eli," she said, grabbing her clutch from the counter. There was no shared moment, no glance of appreciation. It was as if my compliment was simply an observation from a bystander. The most painful change, however, was the one that happened behind our closed bedroom door. The physical intimacy that had been a constant, comforting anchor in our marriage evaporated. Corinne, who had always been a passionate and present partner, became distant. The casual touches, the hand-holding while we watched TV, the arm around my shoulder, they all vanished. Intimate moments became rare, and when they did happen, they felt mechanical, obligatory. When I tried to get close, to bridge the growing chasm between us, she would claim exhaustion, headaches, or simply turn to the other side of the bed, her back a rigid wall. I tried talking about it several times, my voice gentle, searching. "Is everything okay with us, Corey? You seem so far away lately." She would always avoid the topic, brushing it off with a practiced ease. "I'm just so drained from work, Eli. I promise, Things will get back to normal once this big campaign launch is over. But things didn't get back to normal. They got worse. And it wasn't just me who noticed. The kids, with their unfiltered perception, began to feel her absence too. One afternoon, Clara came to me in my study, her brow furrowed with a seriousness that was far beyond her 12 years. "Dad," she asked, "why is Mom always on her phone? It's like she's not even listening when I talk about school." A few days later, Owen came home from his soccer game, his face streaked with dirt and disappointment. "Mom missed my goal," he mumbled, kicking at the leg of the kitchen table. "That's the third game in a row. She never used to miss my games." Each comment was a small knife in my heart. I found myself becoming both mother and father, filling the emotional void she was leaving behind. I took over all the school commitments, helped with every homework assignment, and cooked most of the meals. She'd arrive home late, eat a few bites quickly, and then retreat upstairs, her phone always in her hand. The breaking point, the moment my denial finally shattered, came on a Tuesday night in early March. She came into the living room where I was helping Owen with a diorama. She didn't look at the project. "Eli," she said, her tone businesslike, "I need to travel to Miami this weekend. There's a big marketing conference Apex wants me to attend. It's a last-minute thing, but a huge opportunity." A cold dread washed over me. She had never mentioned a conference before, not once. And I knew for a fact that Apex Marketing Group, despite its size, rarely approved expensive, last-minute travel without extensive prior planning. "Miami?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "I haven't heard you talk about any conference." A flash of anger crossed her face. "Because it just came up, Elias. You think I control the marketing world's schedule?" Her voice was sharp, defensive. "Why are you always so suspicious? I'm trying to advance my career." The accusation stung, but it was the lie behind it that froze my blood. This wasn't about her career. This was something else entirely. The facade had cracked, and through the fissure, I could see a truth so ugly I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. The weekend stretched before me like a barren desert. Corinne packed her bags on Friday morning, her movements brisk and efficient. She gave the kids a quick, distracted kiss, and was out the door, promising to be back Sunday night. I stood at the window and watched her car pull away, a terrible, sinking sensation in my gut. It felt like something fundamental was about to break. I tried to focus on work, but my mind was a storm of suspicion and fear. During my lunch break, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, I did something I had never done before. I called the main office line at Apex Marketing Group. The receptionist, a friendly woman who recognized my name from company holiday parties, answered cheerfully. "Hi," I started, my heart pounding. "This is Elias, Corinne's husband." I was just trying to confirm her return flight details from the Miami conference. She forgot to leave them for me. There was a brief pause. "Oh, yes, the conference. Let me check," she said. I heard the clacking of a keyboard. "Yep, she's representing the agency down there. The itinerary says she's scheduled to return on Sunday evening, just as planned." I felt a wave of momentary relief, so potent it almost made me dizzy. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was the one who was paranoid, possessive. The explanation was correct, but as the relief faded, the uneasiness returned, sharp and persistent. If it was just work, why the secrecy? Why the drastic change in her personality? Why did it all feel so wrong? On Saturday afternoon, I was trying to distract myself by watching a movie with Clara and Owen when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Ronan. He was my best friend from college, a consultant whose work had him traveling constantly. His voice, usually booming with energy, sounded hesitant and uncomfortable. "Elias? Hey, man, you got a minute to talk? It's kind of delicate." My stomach clenched. "Yeah, of course. What's up?" "So, this is a really weird coincidence," he began, stumbling over his words. "I'm in Miami for a meeting, staying at the Marriott, and I saw Corinne." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced a calm tone. "Yeah, I know. She's there for a marketing conference for Apex." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. When Ronan finally spoke again, his voice was low and pained. "Eli, she wasn't alone. And what I saw. Man, it wasn't a professional meeting." The world seemed to slow down. I could hear the cartoon dialogue from the TV, Clara's faint giggle, the ticking of the clock on the wall. "What did you see, Ronan?" I asked, my voice a strained whisper. In a choked voice, he told me. He had seen Corinne by the hotel pool, kissing a man. Not a friendly peck, but passionately, intimately. He said they were all over each other, touching, laughing like a couple on their honeymoon. He knew I wouldn't believe it, that I would try to rationalize it, so he had discreetly recorded a short video on his phone. He said he was so sorry, and that he was sending it to me now. A message notification pinged on my phone. "I have to go," I mumbled to the kids, my voice hoarse. I walked on unsteady legs to the master bathroom and locked the door. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone steady. I pressed play. The images were shocking and undeniable. There was Corinne, lounging by a sparkling blue pool, wearing a tiny black bikini I had never seen before, and she was in the arms of a man, her head tilted back as he kissed her neck. They were laughing, their bodies intertwined. They behaved like lovers who had all the time in the world, their touches lingering and confident. I watched the video 3 times, each viewing more agonizing than the last. On the 3rd time, I forced myself to focus on the man's face. As his features came into focus, it felt as if all the air had been punched from my lungs. It was Desmond, the executive director of Apex Marketing Group, Corinne's direct boss. A man I had met at company parties, a married man whose hand I had shaken. The trip to Miami wasn't just an opportunity for infidelity. It was a calculated romantic getaway, funded by her company, with her own boss. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The lies weren't just lies. They were part of a complex, long-running deception. The foundation of my life hadn't just developed crack. It had been systematically demolished, and I had been standing obliviously in the rubble. I spent the rest of Saturday in a state of controlled shock, moving through the motions of fatherhood like an automaton. I made dinner, helped with homework, and read bedtime stories, all while the horrifying images from the video played on a relentless loop in my mind. When the kids asked why I was so quiet, I blamed a headache. That night, long after the house fell silent, I sat alone in the dark living room, the glow of my phone the only light. I watched the video again and again, not out of masochism, but as a grim confirmation. I was trying to understand how I could have been so blind. Suddenly, everything made sense. The extended happy hours, the last-minute meetings, the new clothes, the physical and emotional distance. It wasn't random. It was a meticulous pattern of deceit, and it all pointed to Desmond. Sometime before dawn, after a sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling of the bedroom I had shared with her for 15 years, something inside me shifted. The searing pain of betrayal began to cool, solidifying into something hard and sharp. The anguish receded, and in its place rose a cold, calculating determination. A confrontation, a screaming match filled with tears and accusations, would lead nowhere. It would give her the chance to lie, to manipulate, to play the victim. I didn't want to fight. I wanted justice. I wanted her and Desmond to face the complete and definitive consequences of their choices. I, the civil engineer who built stable structures, would now be the architect of their downfall. My hands, which had been trembling just hours before, were now steady as I began to work. I saved the video Ronan had sent to a secure cloud drive. I took screenshots of the most compromising images, moments of intimacy that were like daggers to my heart, but were now simply pieces of evidence. Exhibit A, Exhibit B. Next, I did a quick, focused search on Desmond. It didn't take long to find public information about his family, including the address of his home where he lived with his wife, Eleanor, and their 2 teenage children. My heart ached for her. Eleanor deserved to know the truth just as much as I did. She was not collateral damage. She was a co-victim. The most galling part of it all was the brazenness. Corinne hadn't just lied about her feelings. She had transformed a legitimate business trip into a romantic getaway with her boss, using resources from Apex Marketing Group to finance her infidelity. This wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a professional one. I spent the entirety of Sunday planning my response with the precision of a blueprint. On a recommendation from a colleague years ago, I found the number for a top divorce lawyer in Denver. Even though it was a Sunday, I left a desperate, urgent message. To my surprise, he called back within the hour. Hearing the raw determination in my voice, he agreed to meet me at his empty office for an emergency consultation. I sat across from his large mahogany desk and laid out the facts, my voice devoid of emotion. I showed him the video. I explained the timeline of Corinne's changing behavior. He listened intently, his expression grim. "You have more than enough," he confirmed, his voice firm. "This is clear, documented infidelity. Given her stable financial situation and this evidence, you have an excellent chance of getting primary custody of the children." He advised me to wait, to gather more evidence, to not confront her directly until all the legal paperwork was perfectly aligned. It was sound advice, logical advice. But I had already made my decision. I didn't want a long, draining war of attrition. I wanted a swift, decisive end. I wanted Corinne to know, immediately and irrevocably, that I knew everything. Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. The heartbreak was still there, a deep, resonant ache. But it was now overlaid with a clear, sharp sense of purpose. I was no longer a victim adrift in a sea of lies. I was the architect, and I was about to bring the whole corrupt structure down. Sunday night, Corinne returned. She walked through the door radiant and relaxed, with a light tan and a carefree smile I hadn't seen in months. It was the smile of a woman thoroughly satisfied, and the sight of it turned my stomach. She brought small souvenirs for the kids and spun vague, breezy stories about the conference, inspiring speakers, valuable professional contacts. I watched her perform, a hollow feeling growing inside me. She was renewed and happy, not from professional achievement, but from the stolen days she had spent with her lover. I responded in monosyllables, blaming my mood on a hard weekend with the kids. She didn't seem to notice my coldness, or if she did, she chose to ignore it. She took a long shower, her usual ritual, and went to bed early, claiming fatigue from the trip. I lay awake beside her all night, staring at the ceiling, finalizing every detail of my plan. The warmth of her body next to mine felt like a poisonous heat. On Monday morning, I rose before her. I made breakfast for Clara and Owen, my movements calm and deliberate. I gave them each a longer, tighter hug than usual before they left for school. "I love you guys more than anything," I whispered, and I meant it more than I ever had in my life. Corinne came downstairs in her usual hurry, grabbing a cup of coffee. "I need to get to Apex early," she said, checking her phone. "So much to catch up on after the trip." I just nodded and watched her walk out the door, knowing it would be the last time she ever left that house as my wife. As soon as her car was out of sight, my operation began. I arrived at my own job and immediately told my supervisor I had an urgent personal emergency and needed to leave early. He was understanding. My first stop was the lawyer's office. I signed all the divorce papers, authorizing the immediate start of the process. My signature was firm, without a hint of hesitation. My second call was to an express moving company I had researched the day before. I booked them for that afternoon. "I need all of the women's clothes and personal belongings from the master bedroom, bathroom, and closet packed and removed," I instructed, my voice flat and businesslike. "I don't want anything destroyed, just move." They were to deliver the boxes to the garage of my mother-in-law's house, along with a sealed letter I had written the night before, a brief, factual note informing her that her daughter would no longer be living with me and would need a place to stay. While the movers were at the house, their professionalism a strange comfort amidst the chaos. I made my third call, to a locksmith. By the time Corinne came home from work, her keys would be useless pieces of metal, but I wasn't done. The plan required precision timing. I had spent the previous evening preparing 3 distinct envelopes, each one a missile aimed at the heart of her secret life. The first envelope was for Eleanor, Desmond's wife. It contained a USB drive with the video, copies of the most damning screenshots, and a respectful, anonymous-looking letter explaining the situation and expressing my regret for her pain. I sent it via a courier service with guaranteed same-day delivery to her home address. The second envelope was for the head of human resources at Apex Marketing Group. It contained the same evidence, along with a detailed explanation of how a corporate-funded trip had been used for an extramarital affair between an executive director and his direct subordinate, a clear violation of corporate policy and ethics. This, too, was sent by courier for immediate delivery. The third envelope was for Corinne. It held copies of the same screenshots and the divorce papers I had filed that morning. It sat on the hall table, waiting for her. By 5 p.m., everything was in place. The movers were gone. The locks were changed. The couriers had confirmed delivery. The house was quiet, strangely empty. It felt cleansed. I sat in the living room, a silent sentinel, and waited for the final act to begin. At 8 p.m., her headlights cut across the living room window. I heard her car door shut, the familiar click of her heels on the driveway. Then, the sound of her keys scratching uselessly against the new lock. A moment of confused silence, then more frantic scratching. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Then again, I heard her shouting my name through the door. I walked calmly to the entryway, my heart a steady, cold drum. I opened the door just a few inches, enough to see her confused, irritated face. Without a word, I handed her the third sealed envelope. "Elias, what the hell is going on?" she demanded, trying to push the door open. I held it firm. "Why isn't my key working? Have you gone crazy?" I looked at her, my expression unreadable. "You should read what's in the envelope," I said, my voice low and controlled. "Your things are at your mother's house." She tore the envelope open right there on the porch. Her eyes scanned the first page. It was a crystal clear, printed screenshot of her and Desmond kissing by the pool. Her face went slack with shock. She shuffled to the next page, the divorce filing. The color drained from her face, leaving a pasty, gray pallor. Her hands started to shake, and a few of the papers fluttered to the ground. "Elias, no, I can explain," she stammered, her voice a desperate, broken whisper. I didn't give her the chance. I closed the door gently but firmly in her face and engaged the new deadbolt. I walked to the security panel and activated the alarm. For the next hour, she stayed outside, a one-woman storm of desperation. She knocked, then pounded on the door. She cried. She screamed my name. She called my cell phone repeatedly, but I had already turned it off. The neighbor's porch lights began to flick on, curious eyes peering through the curtains. Eventually, defeated and humiliated, she left. The next morning, I woke up early and made breakfast for Clara and Owen. The routine was my anchor. "Where's Mom?" Clara asked, noticing the silence. I sat down with them, my heart aching for the pain I knew this would cause them, but resolute in my decision. "Mom and Dad are having some problems," I explained, keeping my voice simple and calm. "She's going to be staying at Grandma's house for a while, but you'll still see her all the time, and you need to know that none of this is your fault. I love you both very much." Clara, perceptive as always, knew something serious was wrong. Owen just nodded and asked if he could have more syrup on his pancakes. I held onto that small moment of normalcy like a lifeline. Throughout the day, my phone buzzed with dozens of texts from Corinne, a chaotic mix of desperate apologies, furious threats, and pleas for forgiveness. I didn't respond to any of them, but I saved every single one. In the late afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer. "Elias," he said, "I just got off the phone with an attorney representing Eleanor, Desmond's wife. She received your package. She wants to coordinate legal actions. Give her whatever she needs," I said without hesitation. The following week was a hurricane of consequences. Eleanor not only filed for divorce but also sued Desmond for emotional damages and breach of marital trust, using the evidence I had provided. At Apex Marketing Group, the HR department, faced with undeniable proof of misconduct and misuse of company funds, launched an immediate internal investigation. The scandal was swift and brutal. Desmond was summarily fired from his position as executive director, losing his job, his benefits, and his reputation. Corinne was also dismissed for just cause, her career at Apex ending in disgrace. The story spread like wildfire through the tight-knit advertising circles in Denver. Corinne tried to ambush me at my office, but I had security escort her out, instructing them that all future communication must go through my lawyer. The fallout was messy and painful, but it was happening exactly as I had planned. The corrupt structure had been brought down by the weight of its own lies. 2 months passed. The initial storm of legal proceedings and emotional upheaval subsided into a new, quieter rhythm. The temporary custody agreement established a schedule where the kids visited Corinne on alternating weekends. They always returned home with a sense of relief. They told me she was always sad, always crying, and that her new, small apartment felt strange. I was sitting in my study one evening, watching Clara and Owen doing their homework at the kitchen table. A sense of peace had settled over the house, a tranquility I hadn't realized had been missing for so long. The kids, resilient and adaptable, were thriving in the new routine. They seemed calmer, more secure, now that the unspoken tension that had permeated our home was gone. I discovered, to my own surprise, that I was more than capable of managing everything on my own. Corinne had tried reconciliation through long, emotional letters and had even suggested couples therapy, but for me, there was no turning back. Trust, once shattered so completely, could not be pieced back together. I had lost all respect for the woman who had shared 15 years of my life. I heard through common contacts that Richard was facing severe financial problems. The divorce was costly, and his professional reputation was so damaged that finding a new executive position was proving impossible. Corinne was working in a much lower-level marketing job on the other side of town, her own reputation in tatters. I didn't feel a sense of triumph or satisfaction from their misfortune. I just felt a profound sense of closure. They had made their choices, and these were the consequences. Clara looked up from her history book, her expression thoughtful. "Are you okay, Dad?" she asked, noticing me watching them. "You have a weird look on your face." I smiled, a genuine, unforced smile for the first time in what felt like an eternity. "I'm great," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I was just thinking how proud I am of you too. You're the most important thing in my life." Owen, hearing this, abandoned his math worksheet and ran to me, wrapping his arms around my waist in a tight hug. "I like it when it's just the three of us," he said into my shirt. "You make better pancakes than Mom." I laughed, a real, deep laugh that felt like a release. "Is that so? Well, then I guess I'm making my special chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast tomorrow." Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in the backyard with a cup of coffee, looking up at the vast, star-filled Colorado sky. I reflected on everything that had happened. The anger was gone. The bitterness had faded. All that remained was a sense of justice served and a quiet, steady peace. Corinne had made her choices, and I had responded proportionally, definitively. I hadn't yelled, hadn't made a public scandal, hadn't lowered myself to the level of her dishonesty. I had simply presented the truth and allowed the consequences to follow their natural course. Now, I could finally focus on rebuilding. My life wasn't the one I had designed 15 years ago, but the foundation was solid. It was built on integrity, love for my children, and the quiet dawn of a new, more honest future. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly at peace.